Be a patient listener. Never look bored. Never boast. Never be untidy. And never get drunk.
Those are 5 of the 10 written rules found in the files of the man the newspapers called the smoothest con man alive. He followed his rules, and in the spring of 1925, they walked him up to the Eiffel Tower with a bill of sale in his briefcase. This story is drawn from court records, Secret Service files, and the newspapers of the day. Every name, every date, and every dollar figure you're about to hear is documented. The man himself was born Robert. No, that's the thing about Victor Lustig. Even his name needs a records check. Born January 4th, 1890, in the small Bohemian town of Hostine, he would pass through American police stations under more than 40 names. Count Lustig, Robert Miller, Robert Duval. The titles were invented. The manners were not. He spoke 5 languages, dressed like old money, and listened, really listened, the way only a man working from rule number 1 ever listens. Now, Paris, 1925. Here's what Lustig read in the newspapers that spring. The Eiffel Tower was rusting, and the city could barely afford its upkeep. Most people read that and turned the page. Lustig read it and saw a product. He had stationery printed with the seal of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, the government office that actually managed the tower. He gave himself a title, Deputy Director General, and he sent private invitations to 6 of the biggest scrap metal dealers in Paris. A confidential meeting, a government hotel suite.
Gentlemen, the Republic has a delicate matter to discuss.
The tower, he told them, was coming down. 7,000 tons of iron to be sold for scrap, quietly, before the public could object. Think about what he was asking them to believe. That France would demolish its most famous landmark, and that the government would announce it through a whisper in a hotel room. It should have collapsed right there. It didn't, because Lustig had chosen his room carefully. Men rich enough to bid, and hungry enough to want the honor. One of them wanted it more than the rest. His name was André Poisson, a dealer from the provinces, new money, aching to matter in Paris. Lustig read the hunger in him the way you'd read a price tag. And then he did something no honest official would ever do. And that is exactly why it worked. He took Poisson aside and confessed. The ministry's salary, he sighed, was small. A man in his position had expenses. Surely Monsieur understood. He was asking for a bribe. And here is the contradiction worth pausing on. The request that should have exposed the fraud is what sold it. Poisson had doubts, until the corruption. Because a crooked official asking for an envelope? That was the one detail every Parisian businessman recognized as real government behavior. Poisson paid for the tower, and he paid the bribe on top. Roughly 70,000 francs, handed to a man whose ministry title existed only on a printer's proof. Lustig was on a train to Vienna before the ink dried. Then he waited. For the scandal, for the manhunt, for his own face in the papers. Nothing came, because André Poisson, humiliated beyond telling, never reported it. Lustig had built shame into the machine. The mark's silence was a component, as engineered as the stationery. Think about that the next time you wonder why fraud goes unreported. And then, because the silence held, he went back. Same city, same ministry seal, same 7,000 tons of iron, a new room of scrap dealers. But this time, one of them talked to the police before the papers were signed, and Lustig slipped out of France hours ahead of the knock, sailing for America with the tower unsold, twice offered, once paid for. In the States, he traveled with a mahogany box, 2 brass slots, a crank, a nest of rollers inside. He called it a money box, and he demonstrated it in hotel suites. Feed in a genuine $100 bill, wait 6 hours for the, quote, chemical duplication, and out came 2. perfect copies. The machine worked every time, in front of every buyer, because Lustig had loaded real bills into it before the demonstration. He sold that box again and again for tens of thousands of dollars. By the time the 6-hour cycle produced its first blank paper, he was 2 states away. One buyer, a Texas sheriff, actually tracked him down to Chicago. Lustig talked his way out, apologized, refunded the man in full, in counterfeit. And Chicago brings us to the strangest entry in his file. In the middle of Prohibition, Victor Lustig walked into Al Capone's office and asked the most dangerous man in America to invest $50,000 in a stock deal. Capone paid. Now, the con you're expecting is that Lustig vanished with the money. He didn't. He put the $50,000 in a safe deposit box, let it sit for 2 months, came back, and returned every dollar. The deal fell through, he said. My apologies, and I have lost my own stake. Capone, staring at a man he'd expected never to see again, was so struck by the honesty that he handed him $5,000 for his trouble, which was the only money Lustig ever wanted. He had gambled $50,000 of Capone's dollars to buy one thing, the reputation of an honest man, in the one office in Chicago where that reputation was priceless. Ask yourself what the product was in that con. It wasn't stock, it was trust, manufactured, aged 2 months, and sold at $5,000. Rule 8, remember, never boast. Let your importance be quietly obvious. But the 1930s asked for more than charm. With a Nebraska pharmacist named William Watts, Lustig moved from selling fake machines to running a real one. Engraved plates, professional inks, and a courier network washing tens of thousands of counterfeit dollars into circulation every month for 5 years. Federal agents had a nickname for the bills: Lustig money. It was the first product he ever attached his own name to, and it was the one that ended him. May 10th, 1935, New York City. Secret Service agents finally take him on the street. In his pocket, no plates, no cash, just one small key. Lustig refused to say what it opened. The agents walked the city's lockers until they found the door it fit. A locker in the Times Square subway station. Inside, $51,000 in counterfeit bills, and the engraving plates that printed them. The smoothest liar in America, undone by a piece of brass that couldn't talk. But he had one performance left. September 1st, 1935, the day before trial. The Federal House of Detention in Manhattan. Lustig knots bedsheets into a rope, goes out a window in broad daylight, and, when passers-by stare up at the man dangling off a federal building, he produces a rag and begins wiping the windows. A workman, invisible. He climbed down, bowed to no one, and vanished. For 27 days. They retook him in Pittsburgh, and this time there was no room, no suite, no audience. 15 years for the counterfeiting, 5 more for the escape. Destination? Alcatraz. The island did what no police force in Europe or America had managed. It made Victor Lustig ordinary. The new prisoner was, by every account, a model inmate, quiet, tidy, Rule 9 to the end. In March 1947, at the Federal Medical Center in Springfield, Missouri, he contracted pneumonia, and on March 11th, he died, a fact the newspapers took months to even notice. The man who sold the Eiffel Tower left behind no fortune anyone ever found, just the rules.
Be a patient listener. Never look bored. Never boast. Never be untidy. Never get drunk.
10 commandments for taking everything a man has, and not one of them tells you how to stop. Next time, the immigrant clerk who promised Boston 50% in 90 days and built the swindle that still carries his name. Charles Ponzi. That file is already open.